Hello and welcome to another video here on Rule the Game. Today I'll show you how to play Terraforming Mars, the dice game by Jacob and Daniel Fryxelius, published by Stronghold games for 1 to 4 players and lasts about 45 minutes. Please note that this is Terraforming Mars, the dice game. As of the recording, there are at least 2 other versions of Terraforming Mars out there, one being Terraforming Mars, the original game, and then Terraforming Mars Ares Edition. If you want to play one of these other games, you might have to watch another video, but here we're talking about the dice game. One other disclaimer, I have the Kickstarter version again, as you can actually see here on the bottom of this game. It has some extensions in there. I will not explain those. I will also not explain the solo game. This is just the basic version, 2 to 4 players. To set up for the game, you place the player board in the middle of the table. You then shuffle all your project cards and put them as a deck on the side. You have bonus cards that say bonus on the side. You take out 2 per player. So in this case, let's say we have a 3-player game, 6 of them. You put the rest of them in the box and you make a deck here on the side. You place the wildcard tokens on the side of the board so everybody can reach them. Same with the forest and the city tiles. You take out all the dice, also here, that everybody can reach them. You then place these transparent cubes here on 0 and minus 32 degrees. And you place a cube for every player who's going to be playing on the victory point track on 0. You then take from the milestone cards 3 of these milestone cards randomly and place them here on the milestones. You also place your water here on the blue 7, and you place these other tokens, the brown ones, also on the side. You also take 3 dice of random colors, but not the same. You roll them, you place them here. Those will be the awards at the end. Then every player gets 2 of these corporation cards. They get shuffled, 2 dealt, and we also hand every player 5 of the project cards. Each player now has to decide on one of the corporation cards. They can look at them first, of course. They can also look at their cards first, and then they decide on one of the corporation cards that they want to keep. The other one goes back in the box. And finally, each player then takes the starting resources that they have available, which come from their corporation. So in this case, this player gets 3 wildcard tokens that they take from here. They then cover that field with a rectangle of their color. And they also get here these dice that are mentioned there, 2 yellow dice and a red die. They roll them. Those are now their starting resources. And lastly, this game has a first player penalty. This means that the player who will go first will have to hand over one of their resources to the last player. For example, this die could then go over to the 3rd player. The game also comes with these guidelines here that you can put on the table so each player can see what kind of actions they can do during the game. And now we're ready to go. To win Terraforming Mars, you have to have the most victory points at the end of the game. Victory points are shown here on this victory point track that can be expanded past 50 if necessary. Victory points during the game are awarded instantaneously when you do some terraforming on Mars, meaning when you are able to increase the temperature or increase the oxygen level, or if you're able to place ocean tiles or forest tiles or city tiles on Mars. In addition, you will also get points at the end of the game for victory points that you have on your cards that you've built by the end of the game, and I will show you how to build them later in the gameplay section. Some of the cards have victory points down here. Those are marked here in red. Those are the victory points that you get at the end of the game. Then we have here milestones. These cards are handed out to the player who reaches these milestones first. For example, here, the player who has 16 victory points during the game first will get this one, and that will be worth 4 extra points at the end of the game. Or the first player who reaches 5 green cards, they will get this card, and then they also have 4 victory points at the end of the game. And up here are the awards that will also give you victory points, where we check who has spent most of these resources to buy their cards. And later on, you will see all your cards have costs up on top here. Those are their costs. And we'll check who actually has most of these icons that are up here. So we would first check who has the most euros, and you actually realize that this player here wouldn't have a single euro if they had only played these cards, so they wouldn't get anything. But you count how many euro symbols are here on all these cards, and the person who has the most of them gets 5 victory points, the second most gets 3 victory points. Should 2 players have the same number of points, they both get the higher number. So if 2 players have the most number, they get 5. If 2 players have the second most, they get 3. Note that if 2 players tie for first, then there will be no 3 victory points for any other player. And in a 2-player game, there will be only 5 victory points for the person who has the most of one icon, while there's no second place. And then you do the same here for the city die and also for the paw die. Now let me show you how to play this game. Terraforming Mars, the dice game, is based on turns. Whenever it is your turn, you can decide if you want to do a production turn or an action turn. I will first show you how to play action turns. We'll take here this nice guideline cards to help you through the different steps that are possible. Each action turn consists of a support action followed by a main action. The support action here is that you can take a die and you choose whichever color die you want to take. So that's the white dies. They always mean you can choose which one you want to take. You take whatever die you want to take, you roll it, that's your new resource. As you can see on the bottom here, on each die, certain icons are more often available than others. So for the gray die, for example, the hammer is 3 times on this die. You have it 3 times here. The star is only twice. The city is only once. So that's how you see how much value these different rolls have that you do. Second option, and you can only pick one of these 3 options to do in the support action. The second option is that you can return any of your resources back to the bank. And the question mark here on white means that it's really any die that you can return. And if you do that, you can turn one of your dies that you still have available onto a different side. So you can turn the euro symbol here on the world symbol, for example. Third option that you have as a support action is that you return any of your dies and you can get 2 more project cards and take them in your hand. Those are the support actions. The main actions are you play a card. Now you play a card, that's the main action that you really have in this game. You want to play as many cards as you can because cards will give you victory points, they will give you bonuses, they will give you production, they will give you additional actions. There's so many different things you can do with these project cards. Now, if you want to play a card, you would have to be able to pay their costs. Each card shows up here on top left the cost of the cards. So this card will cost you a flask, a lighting, and 2 stars. You don't just have to have the right color of dice in your hands that you could actually pay these cards, but you actually really need to have the right symbols here. So me, in my case, I couldn't really pay for any of this. If I had this combination here, I would return the dice to the bank, and then I can place this card in front of me. Please note that most of the players will actually get also these wildcard tokens in the very beginning. A wildcard token can be any resource. When you buy a card, you just return it back to the stack of these wildcard tokens. There are green cards, there are also red cards, and there are blue cards. They all have different meaning. Green cards show you up on top right here what you can produce with this card into production turn. I'll get to the production turn later. Red cards usually give you some sort of bonus, and in this case we increase the temperature, which I will show later, and you'll get a very specific die here. So in this case you really take the die with the leaf and put the leaf to your other dies. And you see also that this card will give you a victory point at the end of the game. Blue cards give you additional actions that you can perform. As you can see here, there is in gray a support action, it says here, that you can do instead of the support actions that you have here on the action turn. In this case, what you can do as a support action with this card is that you take a wildcard token. Should you decide to use the support action, you then turn your card to the side so that it's clear that you've used this card. There are some other blue cards that actually have free actions. This one you can do at the beginning of your turn, at the end of the turn, whenever you feel like it. A free action in this case is that you can get an additional card. The same thing happens here for this card. Should you have built this card, have paid the costs, then you have it in front of you. If you want to use it at any point in time, you do the action and then you turn it, and now you know it's used and you can't use it anymore. There are also blue cards that have main actions on them, which in this case means I can return a hammer if I have one, and I get to place an ocean tile, which I get later too. Also here, once you've done this main action, you turn this side. So this is the main action that you do as a main action down here. You have the option also as a main action to do another supportive action. That means you just go back up here and you do another action from up here. You could also do something else down below here. You could also return 3 Celsius dice to increase the temperature, 3 water droplet dice to place an ocean tile. You could also return 4 leaf dice to place a forest tile, or 3 city tiles dice to place a city tile, or you return 3 euro symbols to get 2 victory points right away. If at any point in the game you see victory points that have the green marker down here to the bottom, that means they're instantaneous. And that's compared to these that you see up here that are red on the side, which you won't get until the end of the game. Instantaneous always means that as soon as I did something like this, let's say I had just returned 3 euro dice, I get 2 victory points, I move the cube here to the 2. So this is the action turn that you can do. And we'll get to placing all these water tiles and so on the board in a minute. The other option that I told you that you have is that you play a production turn. In a production turn, first, if you have more than 3 dice, you have to decide which 3 dice you keep, and you have to return the other dice. They go back up here. You then also get to decide if you want to return any of these cards or discard any of these cards that you have. They would go on the discard pile. You then fill up your hand back to 5 cards. And then we do the actual dice production, in which case we take dice from all our production cards. There's our corporation card, has 2 yellow and 1 red. And let's say we had played this resource card which has 2 blue. We take all these dice, we roll them, and then we take them with the same face up into the other dice, into the set of other dice that we already have. And the last thing in the production turn would be that if you had a blue card that was already used in a turn before and had been turned, you can now turn it back so that you can use it again later. So those are the basic options that you have in this game. 1, you do action turn. 2, you do production turn. So let me show you how we now place tiles on the main board or do the terraforming. Let's say we had this card and we have a main action now and we want to do that main action. I have a hammer. So what I do is I return this hammer and now I get an ocean tile. Ocean tiles can be placed here on Mars on the ocean symbols. So the blue fields that you have available. Wherever you place your ocean tile, you get whatever bonus it says underneath. Meaning here you get 2 green dice, you get here a blue die, or here you can actually turn a die to a different side. Or here you get a card. Let's say I place it here. I then get 2 green dice that I will put aside for later as resources. And because I played a water tile, I also get automatically 2 victory points. I move my token here by 2. And then because we played this blue card, we turn it to the side so we know we have played it. You can get it turned back again if you do a production turn to use it later again. Now, as I mentioned, here some cards, especially red cards, have here a temperature symbol. What that means is that if you play this card, you can pay for it. You have it now. You can now increase the temperature. You raise the temperature here to the next higher level. This is also considered a terraforming action. It also gives you 2 victory points. Should you have an oxygen symbol, and I currently don't have one here in my cards, but if you had an oxygen symbol, then you can increase here the oxygen level. That's also a terraforming action, and so therefore you also get 2 points. These 3 actions are very important: raising temperature, increasing oxygen, and placing water. They're all considered terraforming actions, and if 2 of those have reached their limit, the game end is triggered. Meaning, if here the oxygen is at the max and the temperature is at the max, the end game is triggered. As soon as you get there, you can still increase the oxygen with some of your cards, but you will only get 1 victory point because the track's finished. Same for temperature, you will only get 1 victory point. As you can also see, when you increase the oxygen level, for example, you end up here on bonus tiles every now and then. So here, if you get to 4, if you're the person who gets up to 4, you will get a green die for free. You roll it, resource is yours. Up here, you get 2 Celsius red dies. So you can't roll those, you get the Celsius. Whenever it shows you an actual symbol, that's what you get. Same here for the temperatures. When you increase at -24, the person who gets there will get a Celsius die, at 16 again, and up here you get a water die. You might notice here that 5 victory points and 12 victory points are marked specially. What happens there is that whenever a player reaches 5 or passes 5, they will get to take the bonus pile, look at all the bonus cards, pick the one that they like, and put the others back here on the deck for the next player. The same happens at 12, so that's why we have 2 bonus cards per player, that everybody gets 2 of those bonus cards, 1 at 5 and 1 at 12. But of course, if you're the first one, you have a choice. Then, during the game, you will sometimes get cards that tell you that you now can play a city, or you can now play a forest. These, of course, go on the brown tiles. You can place them anywhere. It doesn't really matter. Of course, you want to play them rather somewhere where you get some bonus. So here you get an extra victory point, or here you get an extra card. Placing a forest also gives you 2 victory points. Unless there's already a city around it. For each city that is around your forest, when you place your forest, you get an extra point. So in case I place this one here, I'll get 2 victory points for the forest, plus 2 victory points for the 2 cities around it. Likewise, if you play a city and you place it next to a forest, you will get 1 extra point for each forest that is around your city, plus 2 victory points for placing a tile. There are also these brown tiles that you can sometimes place. They don't give you any victory points whatsoever. However, you will still get the bonus. So if you get the brown paw symbol, you can place it down here and you will get your wildcard token. The last thing on the board is whenever a player reaches a milestone, they take the tile from that milestone right away and keep it. That will be 4 victory points at the end. And you see that the conditions are always a little different. Here the instruction manual actually tells you quite nicely what these symbols mean. In this case, it's the first player who has 5 green cards. In this case, it's the first player to have 16 victory points. There are a few side rules. One is, of course, you're not allowed to re-roll a die. Never. The only way you can change a die face is by selecting a support action that lets you change the die face. 2, some of these cards have a minus and then a symbol that is framed in red. That means that whenever you buy this red card, you personally get to increase the temperature. You personally get a gray die, and all the other players will lose a green die if they have one. And last side note is, should you not be able to get new dice because all of the dice in one color or the other are gone, you will be able to take 1 wildcard token instead of the dice that are not there anymore. Even if you're missing 3 or 4 dice, it's just 1 wildcard token that you get. And as I mentioned, the end of the game is triggered when we have reached 2 of the 3 terraforming parameters. The water tiles have been placed, the oxygen has been raised to the max, or the temperature has been raised to the max. Once 2 of these parameters are at the max, then every player gets 1 more turn, and then we go and calculate the extra victory points from the end, which are the milestones, the awards, and also the victory points on the cards that you paid for. Whoever has the most victory points wins. And here are a few hints for the first game. Honestly, I don't really think that the corporations make much of a difference. And that's because you almost never really play production turns. The game usually evolves around action turns. And you might have thought when I explained the game that the only way for you to gain dice is by doing a production turn. Well, that's not really true. Because in the support actions, you have this option that you can take a die and you can roll it and you decide which color you want. When you do production turn, you might not be able to decide what color you want because you have a given assortment of dice that you can take from the cards that you've purchased and the corporation that you have. And not only can you take 1 die when you do a support action, you can take a second die in the main action by taking the option here to do another support action. So I can actually take 2 dice in a regular turn, while if I do a production turn, I actually have to return some of the resources that are gathered. And most of the time I have more than 3 dice. So why would I do a production turn to get rid of my dice? It can happen, but usually then it happens because you don't really like the project cards that you have. And so you want to get rid of the project cards, and that's why you do a production turn. Or you do a production turn because you want to return the blue cards into their initial stage so that you can use them again later. Those are the main reasons to actually do a production turn. Otherwise, you usually do an action turn work with this. And that's also the reason why you might not really be out for too many green project cards, because they don't really give you a bonus at that moment. While if you buy red cards and blue cards, you always get some sort of bonus, be it an instantaneous bonus on the red cards, and that usually also includes victory points, or be it an additional action that you can use then all the time that gives you extra bonus. So usually you're really out on action turns trying to buy as many blue and red cards as you can, and of course with as many victory points as possible. But I think, as in most of the Terraforming Mars versions of this game, the terraforming action is the one where you get the most victory points. Being able to increase the temperature, being able to place a forest or water tile, that always gives you 2 victory points instantaneously, while you don't really have many cards that will give you the 2 victory points. So that's what I would look out for most of the time. That's Terraforming Mars, the dice game. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please subscribe down below, and please come back to this channel.